Welcome back, guys. Margin Call, everyday market recap for the everyday trader. I'm Millennial Motivator. I am the host of the program. We have Colonel and Old Money here with us today. Before we get down to it, general disclaimer, nobody on this program is a financial advisor. We are not qualified in any way to give you financial advice on what you should be doing with your trades, with your portfolio. SEC regulation on that is down below. Everything you're listening to here is either retroactive or opinion, and you should do your own due diligence before you take any trades of any kind. With that said, say what's up, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Going on, boys?
Okay, so normally we start this thing off with wins and losses for the day. Today was a snore fest as far as the market was concerned. Not a lot going on. Colonel, did you have any plays today?
I mean, just plays that have been in like kind of long-term trades. I increased one of my positions whenever it came down a little bit. It's the price target I was looking at to potentially get back into it, which specifically MBRX, mostly because just outside of the COVID, they're looking promising for a lot of their drugs. It definitely could go further down, but overall, I'm fine with holding that long-term. GNPX. That was a nice 25% gain today off of where I entered. And then, of course, I'm still holding a few others that I'm just kind of looking at. BCRX is another one that I'm looking at is potential COVID. And then, of course, I still hold my iPicks. I think iPicks, it fell a little bit today, but not too much. It was only a 5% drop. So it's still holding strong. There's a lot of good news coming out for them so far. And I'm thinking over the next week or so, we're going to hear even more potentially human trials, which will be nice. And then, of course, Waiter. We're just kind of waiting on Waiter. And in 2 weeks here, two to 3 weeks or so, whenever we hear their Q1 results for their earnings call, we'll get a clearer picture. But yeah, for the most part, other than that, I guess we haven't done a podcast since I did a fire sale. I sold almost everything. I liquidated 50% of my entire position because of what happened to oil. I am completely out of oil right now. When CLK20 when it went negative for the first time ever. We've never seen that on any oil contracts in the history of oil that we've known, or at least WTI specifically. So that whenever that happened, I completely liquidated everything, and sure enough, it was right at the perfect time because right after I liquidated, it began to fall, and it began to fall really hard. So very, very happy with that move. But yeah, overall today, it's about a 2% gain on the day, and yeah. Very, very, very resident sleeper.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people out there right now that are just resident sleeper. The market seems super underwhelmed today. Old Money, I know that you're kind of in that hold mode as well. Are you making active plays today?
So today, actually yesterday, I took a SPY call, and I got lucky, I think, for the most part. I took it at the dip, and that was pretty close to the bottom we hit yesterday. And towards the end of the day, I was down probably $60 on that play. I took one too early, and then I doubled down and took one at the perfect time. And they were kind of balancing each other out until just about 20 minutes before close, and I should have got them out. But we're going to have those rock hard hands, and we are going to hold them. The one that has been really making me some money is I took a put on Tank, TNK, based on oil dropping negative, and I saw how high those tanker companies came up on that news, and I'm very hesitant in my options lately on how much I actually lost through this COVID drop. So my strategy lately has been watch those vertical increases, pick up just a small candle or two, be very happy with my win, and get out and not think about it again. Mostly because I've never done very well taking the put side of things, and I want to get into that. And also because I think it's probably a safer way than trying to hold long term on some of these things.
Yeah, I actually love that of identifying the greed and then taking the play against it. I think that's a pretty solid way to actually go into it. I'm not doing a lot of options plays myself, guys. I was I exited my USO position earlier this morning. Almost all of it. I have some of it tucked away just for down the road, but for the most part, I'd say 90% of it I got rid of. I got out of. MBRX is where I moved it into, and for me, it is long hold equity play through this. The plays that I've got locked in: WTRH, MBRX, MFA, and MRO are all plays that I see paying out into the end of the year. So currently, portfolio's down 20% as of right now for the year. Hoping to finish the year up 40%. But really, it's that long equity hold through this, headed into Q4 this year to see what happens. It'll either be a great Christmas or it'll be, pretty stingy, but we'll see how she goes on that. First thing I want to dive into, we got some news right before the market closed. The SEC is actually pursuing some inquiries against a couple of the companies that have come out recently with news about they're putting out tests on COVID-19. I know that this has been one. I'm somebody who watches BioPharm very closely. I've been very intrigued with it, and something that I've said here on the podcast over and over and over and over again is these biofarms that are dropping these announcements that they're looking at getting involved in COVID, whether it's the tests or the vaccines or the treatments, whatever it may be, some of these companies are definitely just putting it out there for the headline and not actively pursuing it. And I was wondering how long before the SEC clamped down, and it looks like they're starting to do that now, that you can't just come out with a headline and say that you're looking at getting in on this, you're looking at being a part of this. You actually have to have some credibility behind what you're saying. What do you guys think? Is this a good move that the SEC is finally doing this, or should they leave it more open and broad and allow as many companies as possible to take a shot at this COVID-19 thing?
It's a multifaceted issue for me, because part of me is I'm very libertarian minded, and so part of me is laissez-faire. So if you're an investor that doesn't fully understand this and you just get into it and you lose your money, that's on you. That really is on you. But at the same time, there's another part of me that just says these companies, it's blatant market manipulation. It's just very blatant market manipulation. And so I'm just like, I wish there was a better way to do it than having the SEC clamp down on it. But right now, there's no better alternative to really helping out some of these investors just not blow up their accounts by being involved in a pump and dump, because that's essentially what it is. But I'm not about pump and dumps, and I never have been. I think they're disgusting that people would do that. But usually it's not the company is involved in it. This is the company being involved in a pump and dump. That's really what it is. It's like I said, it's market manipulation. It is blatant market manipulation. They know they're doing it. They know what's going to happen when they come out and they make these claims. They're going to get people who are eager to get in, and unfortunately, the people who are in at the top are the ones who are left holding the bag, and they usually just get wrecked. Their accounts will just completely get wrecked, depending on how much they invest into it. But their position, I should say, will just completely get demolished.
Especially given the market offerings that these guys are dropping the next day, right?
Exactly, and that really what it is. It's really what it is. They're doing this just to fluff up their numbers, to make their company look more appealing, and it's like I said, it is blatant market manipulation.
Well, I agree with Colonel on that first part. I'm a huge laissez-faire kind of guy, and I think that if you're going to get involved in every little thing, how are we going to? So now you're going to. Is that a blanket statement? So are we going to now go tell Facebook? Are we going to go after Facebook because they announced that they want to get into crypto and LibreCoin? Well, now that they're not doing that, now is that market manipulation as well? Where do you draw the line? And I think that's where the market figures itself out. Now, if this company comes out and says, hey, we're going to get involved in this, and the stock flies, and then they don't, and it dies, well, that's a pretty stiff lesson for me. I'm going to put that company on my watch list of shit that I don't ever want to touch again. And I think that's how the market is one of the great things about the market. You have to instill trust in your shareholders. And if you do things like that, you're not going to have any trust with your shareholders. And the next time that you do have an actual announcement that's good for your company, you're going to have a lot of skeptics, and you're going to have a lot of negative feedback on the socials that say, hey, look what happened last time. And I think the market takes care of itself in that way. I don't think the government's always looking for a way to uh, tell companies how to run and what they need to do. And, oh, it's not right. Well, yeah, it's not a good thing. And it's not, I don't necessarily agree with it being a pump and dump, because pump and dumps are more the consumer or somebody going out and saying, hey, look at this is what's going to happen, buy this, buy this, buy this. That's not so much the company coming out and saying, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this, we're going to do this. And I think that's where the difference lies, is it's the company versus the consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like that the companies are doing it, but I also don't like how the SEC is going about handling this one. While they're putting in inquiries, which is their job, they're supposed to do that. If they feel that there's fraud being committed, they're supposed to drop these inquiries on things, and I'm okay with that. I get that. I think that's part of their mandate. That's what they're doing. But for me, the big one, the really big one with this is we already have a tool in the market that indicates whether something is a complete piece of garbage or not, and that's short selling. And one of the terrible things the SEC has been doing all throughout this massive roller coaster we've been on is it's upticking stocks that get these pumps. They get these massive pumps to outrageous levels, and they restrict short sellers. For me, one of the first things I want to do when I'm seeing any of these stocks blow up, I go to three places. I go to Wall Street Bets to see if somebody is talking on this and there's a trending post on there. I go to Robinhood to see if it's one of the most recently top traded stocks. And then I want to take a look at the short seller positions on this thing. Those three things act as massive indicators to the market, whether this is a legitimate company that's doing good things or it's a complete piece of trash. When you restrict short selling, you are telling people we can no longer indicate that nobody believes that this company is of value. Instead, the only people that can buy this are people that can buy it. You can't sell against it. And it's like, this is so detrimental. The SEC just removed that uptick and allowed people to keep short selling. Yeah, is the stock going to keep going up? Absolutely. But anybody that's been in the market is going to take one look at that thing and go, yep, short sellers. Like that's short selling that's happening on this. We understand that this is a piece of garbage, and as a result, it will come down. And then the SEC doing an inquiry afterwards, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road, because that's how fast they move. But once they get to that process and they go, oh yeah, that was fraud, they can deal with it down the road and issue a fine or delist or whatever they want. But in the moment, in the day, as you're trading it, allowing the short sellers to indicate the value of the stock for me would be the better play. I'd rather see the SEC do that than putting halts and upticks.
I just don't think we need to be in the game of pre-crime. Like you said, we should have restrictions afterwards. We should have inquiries afterwards. But if you are in the game of pre-crime in this, and we're going to safeguard everyone from everything, how does anybody new to the market learn?
Absolutely. And I mean, guys, just for you that are new to the market, that are just hopping in, here's a general rule of thumb. If you see a company drop a headline and it goes up 400%, 500%, 600%, and it's not a mind-blowing headline, like we're not talking cured diabetes, cured cancer, we're talking this company is producing COVID tests now. This should be a large red flag for you in many ways. And I'm not speaking to a specific stock here, so I feel comfortable telling you guys this. But if you see a stock go up 400, 500, 600% in a day, that should be a large warning to you. I think everybody that's been a trader for at least a little while would get little hairs on the back of their neck saying, my bullshit indicator is going off on this. There's something not legitimate about this. And you start looking at why is it doing what it's doing before you actually make a play on it. But again, the people that are new to this market aren't going to understand that. They aren't going to make a play on this. And they're very confused as to why the SEC is acting so slowly on some. It's not acting at all on others. There's just a total lack of consistency in how they're dealing with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it really comes down to like this is a laissez-faire thing. I think it's scummy. Me personally, I think it's scummy. And I wish there was a better mechanism that was out there than dropping these inquiries. I wish there was just more consistent education that actually taught people how to legitimately trade versus, this is how you get rich quick. There needs to be more of that, but it comes down to it really does. And at the end of the day, it's your finger that is on your keyboard, your mouse, your phone, whatever, and you're the one that's executing that trade because you want to see if you can make a very quick buck. And it's just not smart. It's not smart whatsoever. It's not smart. You just don't give a fuck.
Now, this may be pure speculation, but from what I understand, that the FDA and the CD, they have cut a lot of the restrictions on creating these tests in the past couple of months, and just recently, within the past week, they have cut the restrictions so that companies can create these tests without going through a lot of the red tape that they had to before. Now, is this the government's way of restricting those companies that they are allowing to come out with tests without going through all of their usual guidelines from coming out with that? And that's, like I said, pure speculation because I don't know. Just from what I have seen, is this another way for them to have guidelines, but them being much less strict?
Yeah, I mean, so like the FDA, the CDC, and the NIH loosening restrictions on how these tests are being created. Their focus is on something different, right? They're focused on the COVID aspect of things from the disease side. I don't think they care at all about regulating the stock price in any way, shape, or form. The SEC, I think the SEC has realized that when you open the door like this to allow people to just carte blanche, make announcements, completely fabricated announcements about, well, we've got orders for 2 million tests this week and 8 million tests next week and 15 million tests the next week, when you know that those numbers are not legitimate, they're not true. It doesn't matter that you've got a disclaimer at the bottom saying this may not actually be factual data and I may be completely full of shit. Well, okay, great, but that's not enough. You can't just, there has to be a level of accountability from your company to the market, and that's always been there. That's always been an understanding. You are required to show some level of legitimacy behind the press releases that you're putting out. We're not talking a tweet. We're not talking they put out a Twitter tweet saying we may have 2 million cases or 2 million test kits going out next week. We are talking they put out an official press release. They put their name on it. They put their ticker on it. This is a financial document they have released to the market saying, this is what we're doing. This is what it's about. That there isn't facts in there. For me, I think the SEC is bang on. Well, they can't really do anything in the moment. I think 6 months, 9 months down the road, we're going to see a lot more than 2 of these bio companies getting a lot more than the slap on the wrist for going from a 40-cent stock to a $40 stock on a pump and dump.
By the way, Theranos, I think they came out with a COVID test. So make sure you guys get on that one.
That was tongue in cheek for anybody listening.
Thank you. I figured you'd help me out there.
All right. So, I mean, that's COVID out of the way. I'm glad to see the SEC has finally at least caused awareness around this. If the market didn't already know that, every day when you've got 5 new penny stocks out there saying, hey, we're doing COVID now, big red warning sign. This has been weeks of this we've been talking about on the podcast. So no huge surprise there. The other thing that I wanted to dive in and tackle today is the market recovery that we're seeing versus the news that we were expecting from the government side as far as additional stimulus, as far as bailouts for oil, casinos, retail, airlines. What else did they promise to bail out? Restaurants. What do you guys think? Are we actually going to see more of this stimulus spending that we've seen, given that the Fed is pulling back, the government seems to be more combative and argumentative than ever, not passing bills the way that they should, not actually hammering up the details? Do you think the massive spending that we've seen from government, whether it's Fed, whether it's Treasury, whether it's the actual branches of government putting bills through, do you think that we're coming to an end of that spending, or do you think that there's hope for more of that down the road?
Oh, I don't think it's done. I definitely don't think it's done. I think there's a lot more spending to come because a lot of it really comes down to it's election season. I mean, we're coming up into election season, and a lot of these seats are going to be on the line, and they're not going to be the ones that are blamed for letting people starve. And you know that that's not completely factually true, but that's the way that they're going to spin it. There's no doubt in my mind that they're not going to try to spin, at least in some way, shape, or form, of this individual did not help during the stimulus, and so they are letting your children starve. They're letting the elderly die, or whatever they want to spin it. So they are definitely, if the lockdowns continue, and especially if we start to see actual ripples from what has happened, if we start seeing severe repercussions come into a lot of these sectors, which we've talked about, the oil sector is now starting to see it, the airline and travel and hospitality, those sectors have already detrimental to them, like this entire thing. And so I don't see them not being able to spend at least a lot for small businesses. I mean, a lot of small businesses still have not received loans. There's a ton that have not received loan, and they're saying that there's not enough money to give it to these businesses. And so there's more than likely going to have to be something that is done for these small businesses to keep them operating, or to at least keep them paying their employees.
Old money, what do you think?
I think, well, in my opinion, and I think there's a point where you're digging a hole. Are you digging yourself out of it, or are you digging deeper? And we're getting very close to a point where we have no option but to just dig deeper. I mean, with the amount of government debt we have, with just everything, at what point do we go, okay, this is not sustainable, we need to turn around before we can't get our way out? And I think we might be very close to the precipice, if not too far already. To now it's either spend or die, and we can't stop spending now. And they just passed more and more stimulus. I think it was 600 billion that just got through yesterday.
No,
or is that the total
through.
that we're?
Yeah, it's not through, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up. Is the Democrats and the Republicans are finally at that point where they realize election season is around the corner, and they are really digging in on this one. This is not one. The first couple stimulus packages that went through were right away. Yep, we got to do this. It's got to go. Let's go. The third one, the one that happened just before this, that was the biggest one in history, it had a little bit more back and forth, but they still got the damn job done. This one is lacking any unity of any kind. Both sides are digging their heels in and making this an election issue now on this fourth package that's coming out, where we want green credits, and we want environmental credits, and we want gender neutral boards, and they're digging their heels in on one side, and the other side is going, we want big business, we want small government, we want to bail out oil and banking and airports and businesses. That will help the people instead of us just writing checks. Both sides are digging in, and it's leaving us in this awkward place of, this bill was supposed to be passed Monday morning. It didn't get passed. Then it was Tuesday. Didn't get passed. We were assured today this thing would go through so it could just be signed through on Thursday. Didn't happen. And now it looks like we may not see this till June.
And that's where you're seeing with the second, the one that went through previous to this, where there was no official vote count, right? So they could stay on either side. Oh, well, no, I didn't want this. No, I didn't vote for it. Yes, I didn't want it, but yes, I did vote for it. And there's no way to hold anybody accountable for that. And I don't think we're going to see that on this one. You're going to have to say yes or say no, and that's going to be public record. And that's why we're going to fight so hard between two parties, because whichever way you say is what you're going to have to stick with. And I think that's going to cause a lot of separation between what people want. the other thing is, I just have to say, and many people might not agree with this, none of this partisan bullshit needs to be done. We need to get the money to the businesses, the small businesses, the people, and be done. And that's it. There's no reason for all the political games that we're playing here. That can be done in the future when this is gone, over with, and done. And I think the reason we're seeing a lot of this partisan stuff is, like you said, because of the election. And I don't like that.
And I do want to be clear here, guys, because I know I'm going to see it in the comments, especially on the video, whether it's YouTube or Instagram here that this goes up on. To be clear, Trump is sitting there with his pen like this, ready to sign this thing. It's the lobbying back and forth between the House Democrats and Republicans to get this thing done. The Senate has to approve this thing, and they are currently holding it up. They are literally holding this thing hostage. Trump is ready. He just wants to sign the darn thing and get it out there. So if you really want to dial in politically on who to blame here, it's not coming from the Oval Office, this delay. This delay is happening in the House and in the Senate, and that's where this is at. So if you're looking to rally against what's happening here, find the name of your governor or your House representative and send them an email, send them a tweet, because they're the ones holding this up. I don't care what side of it you're on, of just give people checks in the mail or bail out small businesses so they can employ people. I don't care what side you're on, but neither side should be looking to the Oval Office for the answer here. The government that the U.S. has in place is there for a reason. You've got three branches of government trying to work together to make something happen. Right now, the Oval Office is not the one holding this up. But I mean, for me, I think that we see less and less coming from the Fed. They realized that they had actually become more than life support. They'd become an iron lung, essentially, for the market, where it was only breathing because the Fed was pumping money. So I really love they've actually dialed back in a huge way on these massive repos at regular intervals throughout the day, massive reverse repos coming in from banking institutions all across the U.S. I love that that's getting dialed back, that we're seeing less and less of that on the daily, and the market is having to fend for itself. And it looks like, it may not be booming, it's definitely has some level of stability despite insane oil movement and despite COVID cases still recording greater increases day after day. The market is showing some level of stability with the Fed pulling out. Now, I do get concerned as we hear the Treasury is looking to spend. I do get concerned as we see no end in sight on stimulus bills, whereas we're arguing about the fourth bill, people are already arguing about the fifth bill and the sixth bill that are supposed to come out. So for me, that idea that the government is supposed to endlessly support the economy is one that I'm not a huge fan of. I don't like that idea of a big government. I would prefer that the economy starts to pick up the pieces in its own way. I get especially scared when you've got the Senate Majority Leader, McConnell, coming out and saying, listen, if you're a state governor and your state is finding itself in financial troubles, just declare bankruptcy. That's okay. Just go for that. And it's like, no, like, please, let's have a certain level of accountability to the people that are managing the infrastructure of municipal, state, federal. We can't just be throwing these things out, guys. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, we're going to have trillions of dollars of debt. We're going to have states and municipalities that are in the red in a serious way, and us just expecting them to declare bankruptcy and screw every small business creditor that is owed from a municipal, state, and federal level is insanity. That's going to kill business a lot quicker than not having some payday loans. It's a really frightening concept when you think about every branch of government considering bankruptcy as an option.
I would like to thank these smaller banks, these credit unions, and these local banks, because under $1 trillion, banks under $1 trillion have done massive amounts of these PPP loans. Under $6 trillion, we're seeing 40% of these loans go out through banks under $6 trillion. And I would like to, shit on the larger banks because they are not doing what they need to be doing. They should be out there with getting this money out, and we're not seeing that. They're not doing that.
I mean, with that as well, there's some big companies out there that I think deserve a lot more recognition. Companies like Shake Shack is not doing well. For anybody watching the stock, they're not doing well as a business. And they did receive a massive amount of money that was supposed to go to small business, and they are not small business. They are a big business with a hell of a lot of companies, a hell of a lot of restaurants, a hell of a lot of employees. That's not what that fund was intended for. And they returned the check that they received as they considered it an error. And I think that takes a lot of credibility. I think that that's a really good move. Whether that's great for their investors or not is a different question. But at least ethically, from where that company stands up, this money was not meant for us. This was meant for mom and pop. This was meant for the small businesses out there, 100 employees or less. We aren't that. And we took this money and we shouldn't have. Here it is back. Use it for the people that are supposed to get it. I love seeing that level of integrity coming from the market. Like Old Money said, I wish we saw it more. But right now, I think that with so little oversight on what's going on here, and it's just a constant push for more money out there, I think we're going to see a lot more people taking advantage of it in any way that they can.
I'd like to point out also that it wasn't that Shake Shack went out there and took this money underhandedly. They met the guidelines that were laid out under this program, and then when it was made clear to them, hey, this money isn't intended for you, they gave it back. And that's a great thing to see.
Yeah. The last thing I want to dive into here, and this is breaking news right now, is they have now confirmed that there are animals testing here in the States positive for COVID. They have now discovered several pets that are testing positive as carriers of COVID. Now, it's not directly affecting the health of the animal, but the animal is a carrier. This is a new implication of this, guys, and I know COVID is a big deal, and it is a big deal, but we don't understand it entirely. We still don't understand it in its entirety, how it works, how it's transmitted, seeing as people are sticking with the story that it came from animals. I'm not going to dive into conspiracy theories otherwise, but this is an animal flu. That's where it started. It went from animal to human. Now we're showing signs that it is being transmitted by pets. Pets can be carriers of it. Is this an added concern that we need to look at moving forward? What do you guys think?
I think there needs to be a lot more research on that. I mean, are the birds in your backyard getting COVID and bringing it to your house? Or is this an isolated, animals in captivity at zoos maybe have gotten COVID in interaction with their handlers or something like that? I don't think we have even close to enough information on that.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. I mean, we know that the bubonic plague was spread because of rats. I mean, there's a lot more information that needs to be said than before I can really give a true opinion on that. And my main thing is people who are throwing out their animals because of this are disgusting fucking people. I think you're a disgusting fuck. I'm just gonna be very blunt about it, because that is, if you're at home and your animal is not an outdoor animal and they are in the house with you, they're not just gonna randomly get COVID in their system. They're not just gonna randomly start carrying this in your house without you somehow already having it. That's just insanity to think that. So, I mean, yeah, animals, more than likely, they're going to be carriers. But, I mean, we're mammals as well. We're carriers as well. So, I mean, if you're going to throw your animal out on the street, I guess you should throw yourself out on the street as well. It's the same logic, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, what they are saying here is they are currently testing felines. This is the CDC. This is not just some conjecture from some random lab somewhere. The CDC did note a concern. They did test somebody who was positive for COVID. They tested their pet. The cat did show signs of respiratory struggles, and as a result, that is proven positive. They did find COVID-19 being the effect on the cat. Now, whether the human gave it to the cat or the cat gave it to the human, that they can't say clearly. But I think that this is an interesting twist where now we're seeing a much larger, I mean, pets is a huge deal. Pets is a big thing. If you're a pet owner, especially with cats, where dogs aren't necessarily outdoor dogs, especially in New York State. But cats is a whole different animal. I know there are lots of people out there lots of people out there who are cat owners that just let their cats go wild. They let their cats go out there. And I mean, for me, it's just another indication, less so about, oh, well, be concerned about cats and dogs and bats and birds. And for me, it's, we don't understand this thing yet. We still don't. We are 3-4 months into this thing, and people are acting like we've got it nailed down. We know what it is. We know where it's coming from. We know what it's about, how it's going to spread, what it's going to do. And we just don't have that data. We don't have that information. We've been so busy trying to cloister ourselves and cut ourselves off and really bubble ourselves that we don't have a clear, accurate picture of what this thing is, how it's going to work, or what it's going to do down the road. So for me, this is just another indication of we don't get it. We don't get it. Nobody can claim that they've got this nailed down. I don't care if you're Russia saying, oh, we haven't had that many cases, so we've got it figured out, or you're China saying, well, we're fudging our numbers and we're through this, or whether you're the U.S. saying, well, we see the apex shortly coming, so everything will be fine. Anybody that's telling you they've got this figured out, we don't. We don't have the implications of this figured out yet.
I think it's actually a good thing in a way. And don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying, hey, good, I'm glad your cat got COVID. What I'm saying is it gives us more data and more things to analyze so we can see how it spreads. Can this spread animal to animal? Is it only human to animal? It gives us a much easier way to, now whatever your thoughts on animal testing are, it's completely irrelevant at this point. We need to find out how this virus spreads, what it does, how it mutates. And I think if we have the ability to look out and see what it's doing in an animal population, or if it's in your house, or if it's in your home, that gives us a whole nother data set that we can look at. And that's great. Another thing that I've seen all over the place in relation to that is that there's not enough tests. Well, how come a monkey or my cat is getting tested, but the people in my neighborhood can't get tests? And you mentioned that, and I think that's very important to say. This isn't just Kaiser going out and testing feral cats in a field. This is somebody that tested positive for the virus, and they were doing research and wanted to know what could go on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also comes down to the fact that, as you said, millennial, is there's a lot of individuals that just let their cat go out and roam free. I mean, that is something that you probably should not be doing right now, like at all. If this is a fact. And it's like I said, if your animals are indoors, they're more than likely not gonna get it. If you have, your animal in the house with you and it gets COVID, more than likely you are the one who has contracted COVID somehow and have given it to your animal. But yeah, if you have a cat or cats and you are allowing them to go outside and roam, then there is a likelihood that they could potentially get it, especially if this is in fact true. So that's something you might need to actually think about and be very careful of.
All right, guys, that's it for today. Huge thank you again to Colonel and Old Money for swinging through. If this was of help to you in any way, shape, or form, please take the time, give it a like, leave a comment, share it out to your friends and family, anybody that you know that's an everyday trader that's looking to get in on this, guys. I hope you have an amazing day, and we will catch you tomorrow with another great podcast episode. See you then.